Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into a really fascinating topic. We're going to break down a sermon from Pastor Hernandez Diaz-Lopez that unpacks one of the most talked about chapters in the Bible, Matthew 24. It's all about the signs of the end times and the second coming of Christ.
All right, so here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at the big question that kicked this whole thing off. Then, we'll walk through the specific signs the sermon points out. After that, we'll get into how this return is actually supposed to happen, and we'll wrap up with the main message, the real takeaway from all of this.
So, where does this all start? Picture this. Jesus is with his disciples, and he makes this really shocking prediction that the magnificent temple in Jerusalem, the heart of their world, would be completely destroyed, not one stone left on another. As you can imagine, this led his disciples to ask a pretty urgent question.
And that's the question right there. They pull him aside privately on the Mount of Olives, and this question really sets the stage for everything that follows. Now, what's so interesting, and this is a key point in the sermon, is that the answer Jesus gives seems to work on two different levels, two timelines at the same time. He's talking about something right around the corner, the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD, but also about something way off in the future, the end of the age itself.
Okay, so the first sign. You might think it would be something dramatic, like a war or a natural disaster, right? But no. The very first thing Jesus warns about, and the pastor really emphasizes this, is deception. Specifically, religious deception. That's presented as the number one thing to be on the lookout for. And this isn't going to be some clumsy, obvious trick. The sermon makes it clear this deception will be sophisticated. We're talking false prophets performing what look like great signs and wonders to make themselves seem legit. And to put this into a modern context, the pastor cites this one sociologist's finding, and it's pretty staggering. In Brazil alone, there are over 104,000 different registered church organizations. 104,000. It really paints a picture of a confusing religious landscape. So with all that potential confusion, what's the test? The teaching is super clear on this. The ultimate way to measure truth isn't about impressive miracles or how charismatic a leader is. The bottom line, the litmus test, is always this. Does it actually line up with the scriptures? That's the anchor.
All right, so after that warning about a crisis of truth, the prophecy pivots. It moves from the spiritual to the physical, to signs of chaos and conflict all over the world.
The pastor uses a really powerful phrase to describe the world today, a powder keg. He talks about this idea of peace through strength, which is, well, it's a bit of an oxymoron, right? It's where nations aren't friends, they're just heavily armed out of fear of each other. And the sermon points to the constant threat of nuclear war as a perfect example of just how tense things are.
And you can see a clear pattern here, an escalation of chaos. It starts with wars and rumors of wars, just the talk of conflict. But then it ramps up to nation rising against nation, actual full-blown conflict. And the sermon points out the domino effect. War leads to famine, and there's an increase in natural disasters too. The final piece of this grim puzzle, widespread persecution of believers. The pastor flags this as another major sign to watch for. Okay, this next sign is really fascinating. It's all about a huge paradox, this weird split between how far we've come as a species in one area and, well, how we're doing in another.
Yeah, check this out. This really gets to the heart of a central point in the sermon. On one side, we are absolute giants in science and technology. We've got medical miracles, instant global communication. It's incredible. But on the other side, the sermon argues we've become, and this is the pastor's phrase, a dwarf in moral life. Basically, lawlessness is on the rise, violence is everywhere, and the love people have for each other is growing cold.
But it's not all doom and gloom. In the middle of all these difficult signs, the sermon highlights a really positive one, a kind of countersign, and it's this prophecy that the gospel, the good news, will be preached to every single nation before the end finally arrives. So how does that even happen? Well, ironically, it connects back to that giant in science idea. The pastor points directly at modern technology, the internet, social media, as the main tool being used to fulfill this prophecy right now. He gives this amazing example. A single online church service can have 7,500 people watching from over 100 different countries. That kind of global reach was just completely unimaginable for most of human history. Okay, so we've gone through the what, the signs to look for, but what about the how?
The sermon then shifts to describe the actual event, the second coming itself, and the main point here is that this is not going to be some subtle, easy-to-miss thing. Yeah, according to this teaching, it's going to be absolutely unmistakable. First, it's personal. The same Jesus who left is the one who will return. Second, it's visible. Every eye will see him, not just a few people. Third, it's audible. There's going to be a shout, the voice of an archangel, a trumpet. You're going to hear it. And it'll be sudden, like lightning flashing across the entire sky. And finally, it will be glorious. He'll come on the clouds with incredible power and glory. No way to miss it. And this creates this incredible picture of a day with two totally different realities happening at once. For most of the world, the unprepared, it'll be a total shock. Life will just be going on as normal, business as usual, like in the days of Noah, and then bam, it happens. But for believers, it's the exact opposite. It's the moment they've been waiting for, the moment of resurrection for those who have died and transformation for the living. So you might be asking, okay, what's the point of all this? Why lay out all these signs and prophecies? The sermon's conclusion isn't about trying to guess the date or get lost in speculation. It's much more direct. It's a clear and simple call to action. And this really gets to the core message. The whole point of knowing these signs isn't to get out your calendar and try to pinpoint the exact day. In fact, the text says only God the Father knows that. Instead, the focus is meant to be on creating a feeling of hopeful anticipation. It's all captured in this one ancient Aramaic word, Maranatha. It's a prayer, a plea that simply means, "Our Lord, come." So let's boil it all down. The crucial takeaway is this. The goal isn't prediction, it's preparation. Understanding these signs isn't supposed to make you scared or obsessed with trying to figure out a timeline. The whole point is to encourage a state of being spiritually ready, of being watchful, and living out an active faith every day. And that's our deep dive into this interpretation of Matthew 24. It's a really powerful way of looking at it, isn't it? It takes this ancient prophecy and reframes it as a very real, very present call to be aware and to be prepared today. And that, of course, leaves just one final, very personal question for all of us to think about. Are you ready?